Next up, we get visited again from our friends at PearTree. Today, we're going to be joined by Lisa Davis, who is the CEO of PearTree Securities. Yesterday, we were joined by Ron Birnbaum, who is the founder of PearTree Canada. Pardon me. Lisa is going to be here to speak with us about new developments and securing global capital for exploration projects in Canada, a topic that is near and dear to all of our delegates' hearts. Now, Lisa herself let's give a little bit of a detail on Lisa. She draws on her knowledge of securities regulation gained while on secondment to the Ontario Securities Commission and as general counsel for a specialized investment fund business. Lisa is also responsible for the legal and compliance aspects of the firm's business. She's earned her ICDD designation from the Institute of Corporate Directors and currently serves as a director of Signature Resources. Lisa is also a past director and co-chair of the Finance and Taxation Committee of the PDAC, and she's a member of the advisory board for Lights, which is a program aimed at addressing the shortage of appropriate housing for intellectually disabled citizens. Lisa, wonderful to see you. It's been too long with all this COVID. How have you been keeping through all of this?
I've been pretty good, Anthony. It has been too long, and I hope next time we do this is going to be in person, but it's great to be back with the Symposium again this year.
Excellent. Well, it's wonderful to have you. I always love checking in with you and with Ron. And a very excellent topic for today. So why don't I turn that over to you and you can inform us all.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen here. The right one. Let's see. Are you seeing my presentation, Anthony?
I am not yet. Laura, can you give some guidance here?
No?
Of course. Yes, Lisa, just make sure your presentation is open and then click the share screen button at the bottom.
Okay.
You see that share screen button at the bottom? And then click on the presentation you want to share within that screen of the share screen one. And if not, I can always share.
Okay, I see. All right. I think
you got it now. There you go.
Got it? Okay, good.
It's just coming up though. So it's, oh, there we go. Now it's fully loaded. Have fun.
Yes.
We're good.
Shout out to Laura. She keeps this all looking pretty good.
Laura is awesome. I second that.
All right. Well, thanks again, Anthony. And as you mentioned, you're welcoming PearTree again. Yesterday, the founder of PearTree, Ron Birnbaum, spoke. And if you tuned in, you heard a little bit about the current policy position of the Liberal government, and in particular concerns regarding how an increase in the capital gains inclusion rate could undermine significantly the incentive in investment in mineral exploration in Canada, which is provided by our flow-through share regime. And you know, I think most listeners today know this is really the underpinnings of a very vibrant Canadian junior mining financing system. So just as a reminder, PearTree has initiated a petition asking the federal government to exempt gains on the sale of flow-through shares from an increase in the capital gains inclusion rate. And more information and the petition can be found on the iPetitions website, but probably easier just to go to PearTree Canada's website for the link, which I believe is up there today. If not, it will be shortly. And we really do urge all members of the Canadian mining community to add their name to the petition. This is so important in that, you know, the likely impact of an increase would mean lower premiums for flow-through share issuances, and I know that none of us want to see that happen. So just to illustrate how important the flow-through regime is to mineral exploration in Canada, I'd like to just share some of the latest statistics on financing sources for Canadian mineral exploration. Flow-through financings have consistently been 2/3 or more of all equity financings on Canadian exchanges for Canadian exploration. And if you look at this chart, you'll see that based on preliminary data for the first 3 quarters of this year, we're trending even higher than that. In PearTree's little subsector of what's come to be known as charity flow-through financing, The trend seems to be similar in that about 2/3 of flow-through financing in turn is charity flow-through financing, which really highlights the superior value proposition of the structured form of financing. We've seen a couple of other trends specifically at PearTree this year. So while we're actually expecting to do about 50% more in terms of capital raising in 2021 relative to 2020, and things still seem to be going strong this quarter, we're probably on track to do about the same number of transactions. So obviously pointing to the fact that the size of individual transactions has grown. We've done several transactions that are in excess of 50 million, as great as 70 million early this year with the Cisco mining. So I think it's generally well known for companies exploring in Canada that flow-through shares are simply common shares available to Canadian resident subscribers who can deduct the subscription price of those shares from his or her income for Canadian taxation purposes. And I wanted to show this slide just to illustrate the value proposition of structured flow-through financing, where you can look at a flow-through share as having two components, each of which can be assigned a value. The premium to market, typically relative to a common share issue, reflects the aggregate value of the underlying equity and the tax benefits. In this case, $1.75 per share would go to an issuer, and this is based on raising funds for financing surface exploration in the province of Quebec. In charitable flow-through financings that are arranged by PearTree, we decouple the tax benefits from the underlying equity. And we can sell the underlying common shares to prearranged investors stripped of the tax benefits at a price that's acceptable to the initial subscriber donating those shares, after taking into account that the subscriber is retaining the value associated with the flow-through characteristics of the shares. So this really means two important things. The universe of investors is significantly expanded to include any global institutional or strategic investor, not just someone who would be able to take advantage of the tax benefits associated with flow-through shares. And the prearranged global investors can acquire common equity at a discounted price. So the economics let all parties achieve the objectives on their own agenda, which means premium pricing for issuers, less dilution for all shareholders, and the sale of common shares at attractive discounts, resulting in the ability to bridge valuation gaps, attract smart money and patient investors. So now I come to really what's the sort of heart of what I wanted to chat about quickly today. And that is that with charity flow-through financing having become such a well-entrenched feature of exploration funding in Canada, we're seeing different and evolving applications, including issues on foreign exchanges. The proceeds of a flow-through offering have to be used for Canadian projects, but the issuer does not have to be a Canadian company nor have a listing on a Canadian exchange. So PearTree's now facilitated a number of offerings for companies with shares that trade on foreign exchanges without a Canadian listing, raising funds for their Canadian exploration. Offerings on foreign exchanges can attract investors outside of Canada who wouldn't otherwise participate in flow-through offerings, and in circumstances in which the typical Canadian resale restrictions would not be applicable. PearTree also completed the first shelf prospectus offering this year as a charity flow-through financing. Most flow-through financings are conducted as private placements. In the case of a shelf prospectus, a number of factors which are novel for charity flow-through financings have to be considered, such as a much more compressed timeline, typically a larger financing, and pricing that occurs much later in the sequence of events. This requires a team that brings the cross-functional experience that we have at PearTree, And that includes tax, legal, accounting, finance, philanthropic planning, all needed to optimize the structuring for these transactions. Another area that's been interesting this year with the uptick in M&A transactions that we've been seeing is that how important subscription receipts can be as a tool for raising money. As far as I'm aware, no one else has worked through the technical and practical requirements of structuring a subscription receipt transaction in a way that can take advantage of flow-through shares. Subscription receipts require that the subscription price be put in escrow often as much as 6 or 7 weeks before flow-through shares are issued, with the funds being refundable if a transaction, which is a precondition to closing, is not completed. So another novel application for flow-through shares in the donation financing realm, raising issues such as dealing with subscribers who don't expect a lengthy period of time between when they provide the subscription price for the shares and when their charities receive the proceeds of sale of the shares, and staying on side some pretty technical prescribed share rules of the Income Tax Act, which generally do not permit a refund of the subscription price for the shares. I quickly just wanted to show an illustration of one of the transactions we did this year for Benz Mining. This was an interlisted company with shares on both, trading on both the TSX Venture Exchange and the Australian Securities Exchange. We conducted the offering in Australia, and in this case, PearTree, on behalf of its clients, purchased shares for gross proceeds of $10 million to fund exploration in Quebec. And when the shares were donated by the initial subscriber, the charity sold the shares to investors by way of a block trade on the Australian Securities Exchange for the Canadian equivalent of a little less than 63 cents per share. The end buyers were able to acquire the same shares issued for $10 million for a total purchase price of approximately $5.7 million and obtain shares that trade freely on the ASX. I think Ron mentioned yesterday that, while structured flow-through financing is an incredible way to access capital, there are pitfalls and challenges as in every type of capital raising option. The key is to work with partners who have the experience and depth of knowledge to ensure you navigate the rules safely. At PearTree, we think it's important to share our knowledge with our issuer partners. So on December 7th, we'll be hosting a webinar to assist issuers in navigating the flow-through expenditure minefield. The work of a flow-through offering does not end at closing. Understanding how to stay onside CRA's rules and policies can save a lot of management time and expense down the road. And most importantly, will keep your investors happy. I hope you can join us on December 7th to hear the leading experts in this area address some of the issues that most frequently are the focus of CRA reviews and audits. So, Anthony, I think that's really it for me. My contact information is up on the screen, and I'd be delighted to hear from anyone who would like more information.
Excellent, Lisa. Fantastic presentation. A lot of food for thought there. A reminder to everyone just to underline Lisa's point up at the top of her presentation. If you just go to PearTree Securities website, they made it very easy there. If you are interested in signing that petition, I know I did. So go there, click on that button and get that. It is an important issue. We do need to make sure that flow-throughs remain in good health going forward. We have a question from the audience here for you, Lisa, from Andrew. He's asking, are there examples in Canada of governments or government funds acting in the role of the institutional buyer in the charitable flow-through share transaction model?
That's a really interesting question. We have talked to different parties that are associated with, government agencies and kind of quasi-government bodies. Sometimes we don't know the answer to that question. If transactions are brokered, we don't really have complete transparency as to, who's on the back end. I know, Quebec is such a fantastic jurisdiction in terms of supporting the mining industry, and of course, as you know, has a whole array of government-sponsored funds that invest in the junior mining sector. And there has been, I think, some political hesitancy, which I don't really think is well founded. It has nothing to do with the structure. I mean, Revenue Quebec has provided very extensive advanced tax rulings on the structure, including GAR rulings, which are very difficult to get. So I think it's something that's evolving, and I believe we're going to see more and more different types of buyers participate, as it just, as you saw early on in my presentation, we're like the biggest part of the flow-through market. So it happened quickly and takes a while sometimes for things on the sort of political and policy side to change, but I think we're getting there.
Okay. Sometimes there is a criticism out there, fair or not fair, that not all portfolio managers are maybe doing as much due diligence when they're putting in flow throughs into the portfolio. They want to get that tax advantage, and sometimes they feel that's enough. What about PearTree? What's your approach to due diligence? Is it more extensive, and if so, why?
I think it is a little bit more extensive. I mean, because our clients are they're making donations to charity, which all hinge on the ability to get the tax benefits associated with flow-through shares. So we've really become experts in the area in partnership with other professional advisors that we work with closely. And we know sometimes that it's viewed as being a little bit of a pain when we're trying to get things together in order to close a financing, but we've also seen things on the other end where something, very often inadvertently, just not being as well educated about this, something's missed, there's a dispute with CRA, it eats up tons of management time, it's expensive. Unfortunately, because of the way the system is designed, the investors that subscribe for the shares are actually directly reassessed by CRA. So as you can imagine, an investor is not going to be a terribly happy camper when CRA comes knocking. So, being able to avoid those things by spending, an extra hour or something up front dealing with these issues is nothing compared to hours and hours and hours of management time and expense and dealing with the dispute with CRA. And most importantly, in showing your investors that your interests are aligned with theirs and that you're doing everything to make sure that they get what they bargained for and they'll be back for more if that's the way they're treated.
Excellent. Lisa, we are up against the clock here, but I just wanted to get one more in to pick up on the idea around earn-ins and how that dynamic works. So a lot of funding is coming into projects by way of earn-ins. Can earn-ins be funded with proceeds from a flow-through offering?
Yeah, they absolutely can. As often is the case, the devil's in the details. Earn-ins have actually been the subject of a couple of rulings by CRA. They're sometimes a little tricky to structure, particularly with some of the transactions that we've seen that cross borders. So money is being raised by an issuer that's actually outside of Canada and the money is being spent in Canada. So, the simple answer is yes, but it's all in making sure that you're dealing with professional advisors and partners who, know how to structure these things properly, because they can easily be done in a way that, isn't effective.
Okay, to put it nicely. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa. We will have to leave it there. Laura has also posted a link for the PearTree webinar. So for those of you who are interested in taking advantage of what PearTree is offering and along further education along those lines, you can go to the link there. Lisa, thank you so much for your time today. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, Anthony. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.